know the old saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same? Well, in a very big way, that's no longer true. We're absorbing fine particulates from the air that go deep into our bloodstream. We're eating more ultra-processed foods that can mess with our gut bacteria and our immune system. We're stressed as never before about work, money, and the challenge of bringing up our kids. And we've discovered that products which were once the epitome of convenience may now harbour dangerous toxins. These changes became part of our lives decades ago, and now we might be paying the price. Young Australians, those in their 30s and 40s, are experiencing unprecedented and world-leading rates of cancer.
Along with the other high-income countries, we have the highest rates of cancers in younger people. We are also finding that it's a Gen X change.
One of the big questions is why?
Like, why me? I was still very young. Like, I don't smoke, I don't drink, I wasn't obese.
If there's not cancer in your family, how come you got it at a young age?
It did make me think, did I do this to myself?
We see young people turn up, usually with large cancers, and we're still scratching our head why.
It's very scary. That's why we need to understand the causes behind it.
The other questions are what to do about it, and are we prepared?
We have a blind spot around environmental chemicals and cancer.
It never should be said that someone is too young to have cancer.
Good morning. Are you going to run or are you going to walk?
See how you go. Maybe run a lap.
It's a Sunday morning ritual for Chris, his wife Ali, and daughter Isabel.
All right, crew, come on in. Today's a fast and fiery one. The total volume is a lot shorter than what it's been. We're only clocking about 4 kilometres. Don't let it fool you. We'll kick off now, first 400. We've got a 3-minute turnaround, 200 to 2, 100. 1, in 3, 2, 1.
Chris is 41 years old. He's a former high school sprinter who's not afraid of a challenge.
It's kind of an accomplishment, but also a relief. Get it done. It makes you feel better for getting up early. Winter morning, it's dark. It's nice to see everyone down here, and we've all got a common goal of just kind of to better ourselves. But yeah, it's enjoyable once it's done.
This is one of the last run clubs that Chris and Ali will be able to make for a while.
Chemo stopped 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks tomorrow.
Okay.
So we're going to have surgery next week, next Tuesday. It'll be another big operation. And then tag team with Ali, and she goes into hospital.
Then it'll be you. So we've got 2 weeks, 13, and then the baby's
13 days
due.
later, so I've got 13 days to recover.
Oh my God.
And we'll come back, okay?
18 months ago, Chris and Ali were newly married when a visit to a specialist changed everything.
We were a week home from our mini honeymoon when Chris was scheduled to have his colonoscopy, and I just assumed that everything would be fine and that the testing that we were doing was completely precautionary.
Just before their wedding, Chris had noticed something new.
I had an episode of bleeding when I went to the bathroom, and it was a one-off. It just happened one day, and I thought, that's strange.
6 weeks later, when the symptoms returned, he went to his GP, who referred him for a colonoscopy.
Did you delay it because of the wedding?
A few weeks.
Yeah, I didn't think it was cancer at that point. It's probably similar to a lot of young people. Cancer's not at the forefront of what you think might be wrong with you.
So you have the colonoscopy, you don't think it's cancer. How did they break the news to you?
Actually, I woke up in recovery and there was a file on a table next to the bed. So I ended up picking up the file and having a look in the file myself. So I read it and it said, it's cancer.
That was a Monday. We had a consult on the Thursday, and so we had to wait several days for the imaging to find out how serious the cancer was and what it actually meant for us.
Chris was diagnosed with advanced bowel cancer, and he's far from alone. Since the year 2000, the rates in 30 to 39-year-olds have gone up by 173%. And when it comes to early-onset bowel cancer, Australia leads the world.
Here we measure different DNA targets.
Associate Professor Dan Buchanan is trying to find out why. He's at the forefront of research into bowel cancer in young people.
The statistics across the countries that have been analysed show that Australia is leading the way. So it really is a case that we seem to be getting more early onset bowel cancer than the rest of the world.
When Dan Buchanan looks at the DNA mutations in bowel tumours, he sees a generational change.
So what we're seeing is in the youngest group of people that developed early onset colorectal cancer, we're seeing a much higher proportion that have a particular type of DNA damage pattern. So we're seeing less of this particular type of damage in the older onset group, suggesting that there's factors or exposures contributing to an earlier age at diagnosis for a group of colorectal cancers.
So if you saw that down the microscope versus another, you could almost tell the age of the person from what you're seeing in their DNA.
That's right, yeah. It's a really good, it's like a fingerprint.
So something happened to cause that change.
Something's happened.
It's dramatic.
It's dramatic. It's really specific in what it's telling us in terms of the types of DNA damage that's there.
Colorectal cancer is in fact the canary in the coal mine. This generational increase is now showing up in a number of cancers.
What Cancer Australia did was it commissioned a piece of work to look at whether there really is an increase in cancers in younger people. And there are approximately 10 that have this increase to varying percentages.
Since the year 2000, the data show remarkable increases in 30 to 39-year-olds, ranging from 4% in breast cancer right up to 500% in prostate cancer. Early onset kidney cancer has gone up by 85%. There's been a 150% increase in liver cancer and 200% in pancreatic cancer. Some, such as prostate cancer, might be explained by changes in the way they're diagnosed, but others can't be explained this way. The increases are confirmed by large data sets in the United States.
Cancer has traditionally been a disease of ageing, and bowel cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer, they all increase with age. But over the last 20 years, there's been a real, it's small in absolute numbers, but it is a real increase in the number of younger adults developing these cancers.
Fiona has another of the fast-rising early-onset cancers, liver, also called hepatocellular carcinoma.
I grew up in Macau. I came to Australia when I was about 7 years old, and then I studied accounting and finance at University in Macquarie.
What were you trying to do there? Hey?
And how did you two meet?
Do you? Through friends, we went badminton, and then we just somehow exchanged numbers from there, and yeah.
Tell me about your kids.
I have 3. My eldest, my son, he's 11 years old. My second child's 9, she's a girl, and my youngest is a girl who's 6.
Watch your head.
Fiona's story is one you often hear from younger people who have cancer. The diagnosis comes late.
I started getting like itch all over my body, and we thought it might be an allergy. We did blood test, everything, and everything came back normal. So we thought nothing of it until, 6 months later, we actually felt some pain in my abdominal area.
The specialist on call at the ER was like, there's no need to worry, it's most likely it's not cancerous.
By the time Fiona was formally diagnosed, the tumour in her liver was huge, and in the week between diagnosis and surgery, it ruptured.
You straight away think, why me? What have I done? I don't smoke, I don't drink, I wasn't obese. I didn't have any of those symptoms. I was being healthy, I was living, trying to, do all the right things, and it still happens. And you don't think liver cancer would happen to someone who's just turned 40.
Fiona.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good. How's your treatment gone today?
Oh, just usual.
Yeah. That tumour test is still in the 60s.
Okay.
So it's still abnormal, but it's not.
Professor Simone Strasser is Fiona's specialist.
Back in the day, this was a rare cancer.
Feeling all right? Mm-hmm.
It generally occurred a few hundred people a year, and they were mainly people with liver disease from alcohol. They were men, they were older. Now over 3,000 people a year are being diagnosed with primary liver cancer or hepatocellular cancer. And some of the young people we see who are slim, who don't drink alcohol, who don't have underlying liver disease, and we're still scratching our head why.
The first thought I had was, I'm not going to watch them grow up. I'm not going to see them go to university. And it's not something you ever thought. You thought you get to grow old with your husband, you get to watch your kids grow up. And then suddenly that was something that could be taken away from you. It was Chinese New Year, and we had family dinner, like a whole family dinner, and we both said, we shouldn't tell them yet, not today. Let us just celebrate Chinese New Year.
Yeah, I remember calling my mum afterwards and just, bawled.
Fiona's cancer journey has been stormy. Major surgery was followed by days in the ICU. Not long after, they discovered the cancer had already spread.
We tried 2 different types of immunotherapy first, but they weren't effective. And now I'm on a clinical trial where I get infusions fortnightly at the hospital. It's keeping the cancer at bay, but it's not a cure. I remember holding back the tears so that my kids won't be as affected.
I guess my biggest worry was back to how it'll affect them. I just want them to know that it's not their fault. Yeah, it's not their fault. And your mum was doing the best she could. Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good evening, everyone. How beautiful is it that we are here celebrating a treasure of our lives, Patrice, and 4 years since diagnosis. Can we hear it for her? And it is always the music community that rally around when we need them most. And that was the story for Patrice. Welcome, my friend, to Laurie singing some of the good tunes.
That's what laughter's for.
I'm Patrice. I am 45. I'm a mum of 2 kids. My youngest daughter Goldie is 11 and my eldest daughter Frankie is 17. And I'm a breast cancer survivor. I'd found the lump a few months beforehand, but I assumed that I was too young for cancer. It turned out to be 4 tumours that had joined together, covering the top half of my left breast, and it had spread into my lymph nodes. It was stage 3.
It's actually not something.
These early onset tumours seem to be different. They're often more advanced at diagnosis and possibly more aggressive.
I mean, the lyrics are like...
Patrice underwent a mastectomy, ovary removal, and is now undergoing hormone treatment.
I told Frankie, my eldest child, first. Frankie had just come out as trans.
I love you, darling.
Frankie just went quiet and said, "Do you think we could get a family boob job?"
Do you ever think, why me?
Yeah. Can't help but think the amount of stress I was under, raising the kids on my own, trying to work. I don't have the gene, but it did make me think, did I do this to myself?
In their search for answers, this younger generation with no known inherited causes often blame themselves.
That's the 3 a.m. thoughts that go through your head, and have you done something to deserve it? And if there's not cancer, bowel cancer in your family, how come you got it at a young age? I have my thoughts about my lifestyle choices and particularly my diet. Almost priding myself on just eating only meat, getting meat lover pizzas and just loaded up with meat. And in hindsight, I would have changed. I would have eaten more fruit and veg. But there's been sort of events through my life that have definitely been traumatic, and there is the belief that trauma and your mental state can put your body in a state of distress, and you might be weaker as a result of that, and that can lead to the cancer cells getting a grip and taking over.
All cancers are caused by genes. Some are inherited, but others are altered by toxins or toxic influences from the world around us. And that seems to be what's happening with this rise in early onset cancers.
Cancer is not a single disease, it's many different diseases. Within a disease that is called breast cancer, there are actually many diseases. But we know that there are different subtypes of cancer, or breast cancer even. And why I'm saying this, it's important because the etiology, that means that the causes of these different types of cancers are different.
The name for the physical, chemical, psychological and social exposures which can affect our health is the exposome. In May, an international group of researchers announced a massive undertaking called the Human Exposome Project, documenting and studying these exposures. Associate Professor Gianluca Severi is investigating the human exposome to understand cancer causes.
We live in a world of complexity, and the Human Exposome Project, it basically encompasses all the environmental factors, but also lifestyle and their connections and interactions to try to explain the causes of different diseases.
The challenge is to determine when the exposures occurred. Tumours rarely develop just because of something in your recent life. It can take decades.
So if we're looking at cancer when you're 30 or 40, that's back to childhood or potentially even earlier.
So what factors changed in our environment when younger people with cancer were kids or their mums were pregnant? And which of these factors might matter? Well, back then was when the childhood obesity epidemic began.
It is very likely that childhood obesity, increasing obesity in young adults, is part of the cause of this increase in young early-onset cancers.
The problem is with obesity and diabetes driving liver disease is that we're seeing this in children and adolescents. Then 20 years of that history or 25 years, you're still a young person at the time that you're running into problems from that and developing cirrhosis and liver cancer.
Our microbiome, our gut bacteria, may also have changed. Through increased caesarean births where babies don't acquire the normal microbiome, antibiotic use, and eating ultra-processed foods. These changes have potentially made our gut more vulnerable to dangerous bacteria.
We have lots of bacteria in our gut, and it's that balance between good and bad bacteria that creates a healthy state. So we think that exposures or environmental toxins may change that balance between good and bad bacteria, allowing some not so friendly bacteria to produce toxins or agents that may damage our DNA.
Research is finding that exposure, probably early in life, to a toxin from a bowel bug called E. coli could be driving some of the mutations that Dan Buchanan is seeing in his tumour samples.
The story for that particular gut bacteria has gone well beyond an association into causation.
Then there are assaults on our genes from exposure to chemicals and plastics.
Plastics, as we'll be talking about today, are the signature material of our modern era.
Dr. Christos Simeonidis is a paediatrician who studies chemical and microplastic exposures.
We're exposed to a broad universe of synthetic chemicals that our biology isn't familiar with. And that has left a great deal of uncertainty. Within the universe of plastic chemicals, we're looking at the last academic count at about 16,000 chemicals that are used or present in plastics. Of those 16,000 chemicals, only 1/3 appear to have been evaluated for potential hazard. If we look back at that 1/3 that have been evaluated, the substantial majority, around 75%, are identified to be hazardous from those assessments. But there's a limit to which that tells us about what they'll do in our full complex biology of the human body.
So can you assume then that the 2/3 you don't know about, you're going to get the same hit rate?
It would seem a wild assumption that we could assume that they're all safe. And yet it seems that the system is currently based on exactly that assumption, that until you establish and prove harm, a chemical is considered to be safe, whether you've looked for harm or not.
Concerns about the health effects of plastics are nothing new. In fact, when Gen X were babies or in utero, we already knew that some of the chemicals in plastics were harmful and persistent.
Today, when they sell us our daily bread, it comes in a plastic bag. Now it emerges that when we eat food packed in plastic, we might, unknowingly, be eating some of the plastic as well. And no one knows the effects of that.
There's a group of chemicals that had a use in plastic as flame retardants, but had much broader use, that we now regulate very tightly, called PCBs, or polychlorinated biphenyls.
Now we have another group of persistent chemicals which go under the generic name of PFAS. They're in everything from non-stick cookware to food packaging and even to some cosmetics. Australia's peak exposure was in the 1970s and 80s. One in particular, PFOA, has been associated with cancer.
One of the forever chemicals. PFOA is now reliably linked with renal cancer, and there is
kidney cancer.
Kidney cancer. And when we look at population level data, there's a strong signal there now between PFOA exposure and breast cancer.
A ban on the industrial use of PFOA in Australia has just come into force. But because it persists in the environment, PFOA's effects could be with us for years to come.
We have a blind spot around environmental chemicals in cancer. And the reason why that's difficult is you need to have data about someone's exposure 20 years ago and where they've ended up now in terms of their health.
In the northern suburbs of Perth, a large study is trying to capture where we are now with children's environmental exposures from birth and how they will affect their health.
Hey, who wants some toast?
Me.
Yeah. What do you want on it?
Jam.
Jam? What do you want on yours?
Vegemite.
Vegemite? Yes, we talked about this.
The study is called Origins, and 5-year-old Pia, 6-year-old Finn, and their mum Beck are part of it.
Are you going to eat all this food?
Yeah.
Today, the kids are booked in for their next round of testing as part of the study.
So what are you looking forward to today?
My funnest part is getting the needle.
That's your funnest part.
My funnest part is getting into the rocket ship.
Yeah, it's going to be so exciting.
All right, so I'm going to get you to wear your space cap and yours as well.
They look like
If we can get you to stick her hair in, that would be great. Oh, good. Okay. Good job.
The rocket ship is in fact a pod which measures the fat in their bodies and is just one of many tests being done on these children.
Origins is this amazing study actually following 10,000 families in pregnancy and then following up these children as they grow up, because we really need to understand what's happening in our world. There's this whole concept of developmental origins of disease where things that happen early in your life do impact on people later on. The Origins study will help to understand the microbiome.
In what way?
Because we are collecting samples when in pregnancy, in mums, and then we're collecting samples in those children, and we're collecting serial samples. Because we've got that longitudinal bar samples and data, we can actually look at that environmental impact on what may be the causal pathways of cancers.
20.8. Oh, she's catching up.
I like the fact that we are helping lots of other people. And I like the idea that we can look back at this data if anything, heaven forbid, did happen to my kids, that data could potentially save their life as well. So not only beneficial to us and our family, but beneficial to all these other families out there.
Can you hop out? All good? Good job.
If researchers are right, and this raised risk of cancer is a generational shift, then the rise isn't going to go away. Cancer incidence rates in Gen X and millennials will likely follow a steeper trajectory as they age.
This is the belief of Dr. Philip Rosenberg. He's a leading cancer biostatistician who's studied data from the US.
If things stay on their current trajectories, then we can expect that they would continue to experience those proportionate increases as they get older. That means that we think that the relative incidence is going to be double for the 1970 cohort compared to the 1950 cohort. And that is kind of like an astonishing fact, is how parallel these curves are over time from age group to age group.
Despite these predictions and the existing rise in people with early onset cancers, our national, state and territory cancer plans make no mention of this group. Professor Dorothy Keefe, who heads the federal government's cancer agency, says they're aware of this.
With the launch of the Australian Cancer Plan 18 months ago now, we turned our attention to what's coming up. And this was one of the things that's clearly changing. More and more evidence is coming out that this is a real phenomenon.
The issue is, the next National Cancer Plan isn't due out until 2033. In the meantime, younger people are left facing a unique set of problems around career, money and family.
The speed at which you go from diagnosis to treatments is very quick, and to do sperm banking and the like is quite stressful, knowing that you're about to start chemotherapy.
We were really hopeful when we first got diagnosed that it would be early stage and that it would be a blip on the radar and something, a big hurdle that we would have to get through to then get through to the other side and build the life that we dreamed of.
Talk to me about the decision to have the baby. And I should say, we're doing this interview 2 or 3 weeks before you're due. So we're very grateful.
Yes, we actually knew from when we first got together that we wanted to extend our family and have a sibling for Isabel. And after Chris's surgery, there was no evidence of disease, and we felt like it was a really good time for us to pursue IVF.
And you obviously fell pregnant.
Yeah, we're having a little girl. We're very excited about that, particularly our daughter Isabel, to have a little sister.
Just after Ali fell pregnant, they found that Chris's cancer had spread and he had surgery to remove 70% of his liver. And now, just before the baby's due, it's come back again and he needs more surgery.
There have been some pretty dark days over the past year and a half, and I think if it wasn't for my family and my friends, I'd really be struggling.
Okay, let's go 11.
1, 2, 3, comma. And then,
That's right, so drop your 8 here. So first question was, am I gonna die? Yeah. I'm a single mum of 2 beautiful girls. I just couldn't die. And then the next question was, can I still work? I still had to keep paying rent.
So plus 2 is 35.
Beautiful.
Plus 1 is 36.
Yep, great. Even in the public system, there's expense that you can't avoid. To be able to access a specialised psychologist or mental health professional.
All the out-of-pocket stuff does add up. The more tests, the more imaging, the more consults that you have that aren't covered by Medicare, it really does escalate quite fast. And I haven't made any super contributions. That does sort of play in my mind a bit in terms of future planning.
We're going through a period where we're going to need to draw down significantly on the savings that we have.
You're a young family. How's that affected family finances?
We get by. We just have to spend it on the things that matter. Just prioritise. I think it's, as a resource, like time is more, we found and learnt that it's more valuable than money. So yeah, it's just making sure that the kids grow up with good memories.
This cost issue eats away at the idea of equitable cancer care for all.
We do have universal health coverage. But that does not mean that people do not have any out-of-pocket costs. The Clinical Oncology Society of Australia has set up financial toxicity guidelines in order to help people through that time, but it is difficult, I agree.
For Patrice, the pressure to keep working to pay rent and bills while getting treatment was almost unbearable.
I was told that I could keep working, and I remember about halfway through I just couldn't stop crying, and it just got worse, and then finally I broke. I stopped answering the door. I wouldn't let the kids answer the door. I just wanted it to end. And then thankfully, my best mate Jim, I remember him just turning up and just saying, enough's enough. It's time that you open the fucking front door and let me in. And so I did. And yeah, he was just like, you need help, and we're gonna get it for you.
For many years, Patrice worked in the arts industry, and that close-knit community has kept her going.
It's soda water. You guys have a little bit more.
Something in me kind of flipped and just went into like, someone needs to be the sounding board for Patrice's ideas. And I mean, Patrice did most of the stuff herself.
That's not true. Overnight, you set up the food roster, the kid roster, all the things.
Yeah, that's true, but that was not by myself. We had a lot of people helping out.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
we're a ragtag bunch of musicians and music industry workers who just came together, love each other, know that if you need something done, you do it.
On nights when Patrice would have appointments, I would come over and make dinner, or I would take Goldie out of the house and take her to somewhere where her and my kid could get together and play. It was really easy to be a help. All the things that we did were just things that I would love to do anyway.
So what are the solutions here? Well, it's possible that if you find these tumours early enough in younger people, they might be curable. One suggestion is to expand screening programs. Why don't we just simply lower the age of screening? There are plenty of people getting colon cancer under the age of 45, and yet, after all this effort, all you've done is bring the screening program down to age 45.
Well, we don't lower the age of screening because it's not that simple. It has to be able to detect enough of those cancers in a population group.
Broad screening of younger people who have no symptoms may well save lives, but it could come at a cost.
So screening isn't necessarily the solution, and there have been modelling studies that show that at the moment in Australia it's cost effective to screen from 45, and that's why we now have a bowel screening program from the age of 45.
Even if we were to reduce the age, currently we only screen for 4 cancers. So it puts the onus on health professionals to make the diagnosis as early as possible.
The people that you talk to, the young people with cancer, they actually do have symptoms. One of the problems is that they have symptoms that aren't easily recognised because of their young age as being associated with cancer.
Professor John Emery studies the diagnosis and treatment of people with cancer in general practice.
Diagnosing cancer in general practice is challenging. Let's say there are 100 people over 50 who come to see their GP with a change in bowel habit. About 3 to 4 of those will actually have bowel cancer. But under 50-year-olds, then less than 1 of those will actually have a bowel cancer. So that's part of the challenge.
John Emery talks about a concept called safety netting. He says people need to be made aware of symptoms and encouraged to visit a GP, and GPs then need to make a clear plan for follow-up so diagnoses aren't delayed.
It's a way of sort of managing that uncertainty, but in a more structured way.
Cancers that are arising in these younger people, they're being diagnosed at a later stage than if they were older.
Yeah. There may be other things that explain the differences in stage. It may be that these tumours are faster growing, for example.
It never should be said that someone is too young to have cancer. What we need to do is make sure that everybody to whom a patient might present has knowledge of what symptoms are red flags and what symptoms should trigger some sort of investigation.
Then there's the bigger question of prevention, especially when it's beyond the control of individuals. And it's not as if we haven't been here before.
The migration of plastic molecules into foodstuffs has been long known about in Australia. And might the consumer ask this: should a substance be sold or used until it is proved dangerous, or should it not be sold until it is proved safe?
The damage from those chemicals years ago might only be emerging today.
We would want to be seeing that all chemicals, prior to being allowed for use, have been assessed for safety. Most important of all of this, we would want to have a system where we know what we're exposed to. Right now, I have a deep interest in plastics and the chemicals that sit in plastics, but I can't tell you what chemicals have been used in any plastic that you show me. And the brand that produced that plastic product, they also don't know which chemicals are sitting in the plastic that they use to make their product.
These are difficult issues. We can throw away our non-stick frying pans, get rid of all of our plastic, eat organic food, eat more vegetables. But the really big issues are for governments.
Do we really want to be asking in 40 years' time, when these kids are adults, whether we could have done more to prevent cancer in their generation?
Government and regulators should be looking to mitigate that risk. The precautionary principle indicates that where you do have uncertainty and where the potential impacts are irreversible or serious, then that could be grounds for acting before you wait for conclusive evidence of harm.
The next song that I'm going to play, I think Patrice has pretty much willed it to be her song. It's a song called 13.
Jim had written this song before I even knew him, called 13. And that song he would play to me when I would be on the couch recovering for treatment. It's really great that I'm there to enjoy it with my beautiful daughters and our community.
Oh my goodness. You blew the biggest bubbles and the biggest boogers.
So here we are together, stuck in time, living out the summers of our prime. No more all-night bars or parting scars. Nothing left but false desire.
I think about whether I'm going to be around in the future. I like to focus on the family that we're building and the home that we've built here.
Forever on my mind.
Chris is a beautiful dad. I really want to make sure that I do everything I can to support him so that they get to have their dad for as long as we possibly can.
Our sun may set and our days turn cold.
It's a stormy, dark period, but it's possible to survive. People do survive these things, and I like to think about us growing old together, raising the girls, and we can look back on this time period and think, that was really hard, but we made it through.
If this program has raised concerns for you, you can contact one of these services.